What's going on, motorsports fans? This is Jared here with the Bearded Garagistas back again. It feels really good to be back, and I feel like I owe you all an apology. I do apologize for being away for so long. Just some family stuff going on. 2 infants in the family. Brett's got one. I got one. Medical things and doctor's appointments, and with the sickness and going back to work, it's just been a little tough to get some time to sit down. But Brett, being Brett, said we need to keep the show going. So he offered to allow me to do the show on my own, which I'm not really a fan of. I mean, I could do it, but I don't like to do it all the time. And I asked my buddy Newman, if you watch our other podcast or listen to our other podcast, Surreal as It Gets, you know Newman has been on. He actually is a listener of the show. He's been watching motorsports pretty much ever since we started this podcast, and he's really dove into it, and he's pretty much neck deep in it by now. He's recording races and yelling at his parents when they delete them off of the TiVo recorder. But yeah, so we're back. This week, this episode, I should say, we're going to do Spain, Monaco, and Azerbaijan all together. It's going to be probably a shorter episode. I don't have my brother for all those awesome little pit lane tips and things you would hear in the drivers' meetings and in all the interviews and things like that. But we do have Newman here, and hopefully he can shed some color commentary and light and some opinions on things he sees from the other side of the table, because he's a Red Bull fan. And as bad, he's wearing a Honda hat right now, and it really upsets me. So we're going to get into it right now. Newman, welcome to the show, my brother.
Howdy.
This is your first time on Bearded Garagistas.
Yes, it is.
So we're going to go over these races in a minute here, but I really wanted to ask you, what about the show got you into racing? What is it that kind of sparked your interest? Because you didn't really watch a lot of racing before we started talking about it.
It was funny. We used to hang out back in the day, and we'd watch NASCAR on the weekend. And I started watching NASCAR with you a lot. And then I kind of drifted off because, I'd be watching baseball or hockey or just in life. But then I started listening to you talk about motorsports again, and then you started talking about the podcast. Now, you had a lot of your one-on-one interviews. I didn't really know what they were talking about because I don't race cars. I have an SUV. That would be weird. But I got into Formula One. I started watching it, listening to what you were talking about, how you brought everything into perspective. So then I started watching it more, and I got the science behind a lot of it and the strategies. And I know I was sitting there on Sunday screaming at my television screen, and my mom goes, "What happened? What's going on?" I go, "The undercut." And now I actually know what that means. To the point where I even have a little race car keychain on my phone.
Hell yeah. Well, it's good to have you on the show as a guest and try to add your 2 cents here and there. And again, I don't have a lot to go over. I know these 3 races already happened, and France has already happened by the time we've sat down and recorded this episode, but we will get to France and do its own episode at a later date, and then we'll get back into doing an episode per race. We also have the Indycar we need to talk about. There's a lot of stuff that's been going on, and we apologize we've been away for so long. So we're going to start with Spain. Spain was a Lewis Hamilton win.
Max second, Bottas third, Leclerc.
Right. Leclerc in fourth. I was pretty shocked at that. And this is kind of where I guess Ricciardo's slide started to happen out of sixth. But when I remember watching this race, and I remember thinking that this was a must-win for Red Bull. I remember watching Verstappen go hard into turn 1, and that's honestly what you have to do. There's no, I feel like Max Verstappen is doing this thing right. There's no beating around the bush. There's no, I'm going to see if I can kind of finesse. When he needs to get his elbows out, he gets his elbows out. He does his thing. And I was really happy to see him go into turn 1. But I do remember thinking back that Spain was a must-win, and obviously that didn't happen because I just read off the list. But do you think at any time, I guess up until now, do you think there was a must-win situation for Red Bull at all, or do you think you're just kind of ready to see the season play out?
I don't think Spain really would have been a must-win for him because it's not a track that's 100% suited to the Red Bull car in itself. But staying up there and making sure Perez came up as close as he did as well, that's really what they wanted to try to stay within Mercedes. And they basically did. With Perez coming in 5th, they stayed within attacking to when they got to more of their tracks that played towards their strengths, like Baku, or even the small parts of like Monaco and things like that. I wouldn't say must win, but definitely needed to keep on the podium.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to stay anywhere close in this race, Max Verstappen, I believe, has to. If Lewis Hamilton is on the podium, he's got to be on the podium. Even if Lewis Hamilton's off the podium, if he can get on there, he's good to go, because that doesn't happen often, you know. So I do remember I wrote down a couple things during this race, and I left those notes, and one of them was the Yuki troubles. He seems to make these brilliant moves and then makes like these weird rookie mistakes, and it's awkward to see. And I know he's a rookie, and I know I'm being a little hard on him, but that's, I guess, because I guess in a way Gasly is his teammate. So you're starting to expect, okay, well, the car could actually do something here. That's not a bum car like Schumacher's driving around in. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a car that can place pretty well. And those one-off weird mistakes where he kind of pulls a Vettel and just spins off the track is kind of weird. Do you think that Yuki is going to have a future? Do you feel like these random little troubles that he's having now are going to get better or get worse?
He's got the talent. He has a talent within him, because sometimes, like you said, you've seen brilliance from him. He like dancing inside the car. But definitely the rookie mistakes come up. If a tailwind hits, he doesn't know how to control it. The understeer hits, he'll hit a curb, and next thing you know, he is pulling a Vettel spin. The thing is, I think he has a future in Formula One as long as Honda is still there. Once Honda pulls out to try to do that whole carbon neutral, it's going to be very interesting to see what the teams do, considering now Red Bull's taking over production for a lot of those parts that Honda was doing. It's going to be interesting because there's not a lot of other drivers that they have in their futures program right now. There's a few, but they would stick with Tsunoda for a while just because he's starting to get more laps under him.
Do you think Gasly jumps ship at the end of the season?
You know, I was
telling
Ocon
you, just signed a 3-year deal.
I was telling you the really out there thing I'd love to see, and now yes, I am a Red Bull fan, but I would like to actually see a Mercedes of Gasly and Russell.
Bro,
that I think would be a team that would be extremely hard to beat, even with Max and Sergio together. If you had a Mercedes team of that,
that's like an inexpensive driver lineup that could shock.
You could go after, like, they're looking. Hamilton maybe retires. Bottas moving to Williams. You know, who knows what's going to happen there.
Right.
But that team, I don't think he'll be in AlphaTauri much longer. Where he goes, Alpine when Alonso finally kicks it again.
Right.
Aston Martin when Vettel maybe wants to kick it again.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely Aston Martin, if Vettel walks away at the end thinking, hey, the Aston Martin's not going anywhere, I'm done, I'm getting the hell out of here. I don't know if he's got it in him to retire, but yeah, that's definitely a good call. A few things about Spain that were kind of an eye-opener. The Hungary 2019 situation where even though Perez did drive a really good race, he drove well, he wasn't close enough. And I don't know if that was based on strategy, if that was based on my theory that Red Bull can't manage two drivers. But he did well enough to stay close, but he didn't stay close enough. And Mercedes was still able to play the pit game and pull the Hungary 2019 where they pit one, they make Max make a choice, and then they catch him anyway. And that's what ended up costing Max the race, which just disappointing. The funny thing that I saw in that whole thing was when they told Bottas not to hold up, don't hold up Lewis. Don't hold Lewis up. When he gets up to Bottas's bumper, Bottas is like, fuck you, I'm not getting out of the way.
I mean, look at the last one. They at the end of the last race, they started talking to him, and on the team radio, they're like, hey, Valtteri, yada, yada, yada. And it was silent.
Yeah.
He didn't say a word.
I'm thinking at this point, I guess in a way for me, if I'm Bottas, I know at this point that Mercedes is not going to they're not going to let me win the championship, nor do I feel like I'm going to win with Max being the contender that he is now with the car that he's got. And I think he also sees Grosjean having success in IndyCar and Magnussen having success in IMSA. And I feel like at this point, he knows that he can go other places, make good money, win races, and get that winning feeling back. You know what I'm saying? These guys, yes, he's with Mercedes and he wins races, but you could tell the man wants a championship, and he's just not going to get there.
And you could tell the team doesn't want him to almost.
No, feel you're right. You're 100% right. I do feel like in a way where he's kind of like
when you spend $55 million on one driver, you don't want to see that driver finish second.
Fair enough. Does that work in all sports? Like, is baseball that way? Like,
Francisco Lindor got a $324 million contract, I believe, and I think for the first 40 games of the season, he was batting around 200. Mets fans were booing him.
Jesus. That's a lot of money to be batting around 200.
But he is one of the best shortstops in the game. Now he's starting to hit better, but when you're paid that much amount of money, they expect you to lace your cleats up every game.
Yeah. And I think that's the way with Lewis, and when he makes these weird mistakes that he's been making, it's kind of interesting when you pay somebody $55 million, and he seems to be not the solid Lewis of old. Lewis 2 years ago, he wasn't making mistakes. Now he's starting to feel the pressure from a driver that I think he fears a little bit.
Nico Rosberg said it best. If you can get into the head of Lewis Hamilton, you beat Lewis Hamilton. And look, he won a world championship by getting into the head of Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. And we've been saying it, Brett's been saying it, that Valtteri last year should have got his elbows out a little bit and try to rattle the cage and play those mind games. Lewis plays mind games all the time, right? He's in the cockpit, he's on the radio, he's playing all these mind games. You don't think that he's not doing it to Valtteri, his own teammate? Of course he is.
My tires are gone. Seth's fastest lap.
Yeah, it's at that point where he's going to do what he has to do to win. I think Ricciardo managed this race well. I'm sad to see that Ricciardo's struggling now. My dude. But in Spain, he wasn't too bad. And I also thought that the teams calling race control every time they were coming anywhere close to Mazepin was hilarious. Like, they're calling about Mazepin, slowing them down, and they're not even close enough to like really have a worry about it.
Blue flags.
Yeah.
No, he's in the lead. That was great.
He was like shocked that he was in the lead. You're right. And then Leclerc, again, putting the Ferrari in Spain higher than it should have been in fourth. What do we think about Leclerc? What do we think about this? Is this a fluke? Is this just Leclerc's that guy? Is the Ferrari getting better? I mean, we're not into Monaco yet, and we'll talk about the Ferrari at Monaco, but
I don't remember if you were the one that said it or if I said it, but he is the perfect guy to be driving a brick with wheels. And we said that last year when last year was like my first full season watching Formula One.
Right.
And even I was going, that car seems almost undrivable, which we found out a little bit more about what the penalties were, and it makes sense. So those penalties were restricted. Now he's fine. He is a good driver. He really is. I think Ferrari's problem sometimes is they have a bunch of guys in there looking at a strategy sheet saying, nah, we'll wing it. We'll see what happens. And they have no strategy going into every weekend.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of going, well, we're going to see how everyone else is playing it, and we're going to do the opposite.
Well, I feel like what Ferrari does is they think they're going to have a good weekend and they have a shit weekend. And then when they think they have a shit weekend, they're going to have a good weekend, and they can't get their strategy right. And on top of that, the car still isn't competitive to the Red Bull and the Mercedes. They're on a different level. Ferrari's a midfield team.
It is going to be a battle for third between really McLaren and Ferrari. Sometimes Aston Martin, I think, will stay up there, but I think the big fight for third is going to be between McLaren and Ferrari this season.
I can agree with that. And as much as I hate to say my dude might be the reason why Ferrari takes third, because Sainz and Leclerc are a pretty solid pairing. And I like to see Norris up top. I think what he's got, we're 5 races in, he's got a top 5 in each one.
If
seven races in.
7 races, he's pointed in top 5, and I think in 5, and pointed in basically every one.
So it's at this point where Ricciardo, I'm not sure if he's This happened to him with Renault too, though. Now that I think about it, when he went to Renault the first year, he has a lot of growing pains.
It took him a year. Took him a year to start driving the Renault. Out of all the players that basically move from one team to the next, Sainz, honestly, if you take Perez, because you know what, Perez has got a great car. Take Perez out of that, but all the guys that went from one place to the next, so you had Sainz, Vettel, keep going basically, and Ricardo. Sainz has been the best one adjusting to that car right away.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, he definitely adjusted to the Ferrari pretty well. I don't know if it suits his driving style or he's just able to make that adjustment, going from Renault, then moving to McLaren and then going over to Ferrari. He's moved around a little bit. Maybe
it gave the Red Bull program underneath. He's driven a lot of different kind of cars, so I think he can move to whatever it is that he's sitting in the cockpit of.
I also think it's what you. I don't know. I don't know what's different between each one. I wish I could really sit down with a Formula One driver or a professional level driver who's had to change teams at the top level of the sport and hear what they have to say about getting used to a new car and a new setup and things like that. Because the cars, like endurance cars, are so different. Because they're just like a Porsche, a Chevy, you know what I'm saying? They're all over the place. But you look at a Formula One car, yeah, the aerodynamics is different. They definitely drive different, 100%. Some have more grip, some have less downforce for speed. But are they that different?
I would think so, especially the difference between open wheel and closed wheel, definitely.
Oh, yeah, well.
But then you look at how the handling, look at Grosjean this year in IndyCar. Going from Formula One for, what was he there, 10 years? Now he's driving an IndyCar. First few took him a little bit to get going, and now he's a mid to mid-high.
You heard what he said about IndyCar, right?
No, I didn't miss that part.
So he said they asked him when he first got to IndyCar, he was driving all smooth like a Formula One car, and he was like 5 seconds off the pace. And they bring him in. They're like, "Hey, you need to step it the fuck up." And he's like, "Okay." So he said he started yoking the car around, just like throwing it around corners, sliding out of the turns, and just burning up the tires. And he said by doing that and driving a little more recklessly, he gained the time and he was on par. So he came in. He's like, "Man, that must have been slower. That was so sloppy." And they're like, "Perfect, good. You're on the stopwatch." Let's move into Monaco. You mean Monaco
Storefest 3.0?
Yeah. Well, I was surprised that Spain was actually not too bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, Spain wasn't bad. It's really weird. The races that you normally see are garbage. Like France, we'll get into France in another episode. Usually garbage. Pretty decent race. So whoever just started watching Formula One this year, don't let that linger. Don't really think that that's norm. Spain, usually you're drooling on yourself. Monaco, you literally fall asleep. And usually France is not a good one either, but hey, we'll take it. I'm always down for good racing. So if you sat me down a few months ago and told me that this season would be going this way by Monaco, I would have laughed at you. I thought Hamilton was probably going to run away with it deep down inside, even though all the predictions and the crazy shit I said. You really always thought Hamilton was going to run away with it. Bottas was going to be right behind him, and then it was going to be your usual Max Verstappen or whatever, and we'd see the same three people on the podium. And that's just simply not the case. Monaco was interesting and it was interesting in qualifying because out of nowhere, Ferrari was fucking flying. And that goes to show, obviously, the improvements they've made to the aerodynamics and the car handling. Maybe not so much the engine, which is funny. A Ferrari with no engine is kind of, that's ironic.
It's not like they missed an engine this time. This time they missed a left drive shaft.
Yeah. Well, if you didn't see it, I don't know how you missed it. Leclerc sets pole-setting lap on his first time out on the track, which was fabulous because then everybody had to run him down. Just so happens, though, Leclerc accidentally cuts a turn too short, hits the inside barrier, and bumps him pretty much where Max Verstappen crashed like a year ago, 2 years ago.
Where he crashed it before, yeah.
And puts it in the wall. They went ahead and they repaired the car. They didn't change the gearbox because they were trying to keep the car in the front row. And they said, hey, everything's good. Gearbox is good, blah, blah, blah. On the way to the grid, left drive shaft seizes up, and that's it. Yeah, race is over for Leclerc. Doesn't have enough time to start. I think they should have checked that before. Like, I don't understand how you don't check the entire car. Give it a once over.
Even if you replace the gearbox, you take a 5-place penalty you're still trying to compete for third place. You're trying to get those points. You take the 5-place penalty. No one's really going to pass each other. So what? You're going from 1 to 6? That's still points.
Yeah. And this was also the vision of seeing the Mercedes having a horrible time handling on a short track. It was really weird to see them struggle. But, looking at the top list here, we had Max Verstappen came in first, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari in second. Amazing.
Then his buddy old Lando.
Yep, and then Lando right behind him in third, and that was a pretty good podium. Verstappen, Sainz, and Norris. That was a hell of a podium. To see Sainz and Norris on the podium together,
it's hysterical.
It was pretty good.
You saw the post-race interviews when they're like, he's talking to Carlos and like Lando's poking him, and then the other way around, like Lando's talking to them, and then Carlos comes over and he goes, "No, you want to talk to me? It's my interview.
It's really
you want to talk to me."
It's a really weird dynamic that they have.
At least that was fun. With Max, they just started talking to Serena Williams, and they didn't really care about him anymore.
He was just like standing in the background like a little
He's like
kid.
a little kid, like, I won the race. Can I talk?
Then you had Sergio Perez in fourth, Sebastian Vettel in fifth, Gasly in sixth, and Hamilton way down in seventh.
Vettel, I love it. Only overtake of the entire one, and the Monaco video guy decides to go, "They're going to show you a picture of Lance Stroll and his eyebrows." Like, it's become a great meme. Great meme all over the place. Every time there's action, people have been posting the Lance Stroll, like, "Hey, this is me." And you miss the only part of real on-track passing.
That was the only one, I think. That I wonder if Monaco probably sets the record for the least amount of passing ever on any track.
It's just how it's set up.
It's horrible. I think it's time. As much as I think it's the jewel in the Formula One crown, and I understand going to the ball after and where it is and where it's located and the yachts coming in, I do also think it might be time to try to change it a little bit, because the cars have gotten so wide now and those streets haven't changed at all that they're really not making any difference at this point.
They are looking to, I think, work on, I think it was turn 8, and there was another one. They are adjusting Monaco going, I think, into next year or the year after. They're trying to widen it a little bit so that there are more turning, more passing abilities.
Yeah.
It just wasn't something because of COVID, they wasn't able to do it now. But I was reading that they are looking to try to adjust how that track runs. It's going to be interesting to see how they try to do that on a working street track.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Plus, you don't just knock down a building in Monaco to move the road a little bit. You know what I'm saying? These buildings been around.
Yeah, but money is power in Monaco, so
yeah. I don't think they're knocking down the Versace store to make the turn a little bit wider.
They pay Versace enough, who knows?
All right, so rumor has it that Bottas's tire is still on the car.
I'm saying
they just changed the car.
He set a world record of longest pit stop in Formula One history.
How long was the tire on the car?
Oh God, I don't even know anymore. They had to retire it. It was on there, I think, until they made it to Azerbaijan. I think it was still there, and then they finally were able to
torch
get
it off.
They didn't torch it off. They were able to get like something behind it to pull it and then really latch onto the nut and pull it out.
Dude.
They didn't have to cut off the whole axle or anything like we thought it was.
Unreal.
That was heartbreaking for basically everybody.
It was tough to watch because it was Bottas.
It was tough to watch, yeah. Mainly because I don't hate Mercedes. I'm not a huge fan of Mercedes, but Bottas gets sticked so bad all the time that it's like
you start to feel bad for him eventually.
Just let him win. Like, he's got the talent, he's got the car.
He's just inconsistent.
Exactly.
And then I think what poured a little salt into the wound was Toto Wolff blaming Bottas because he missed his marks by some stupid, like a quarter of an inch or an inch and a quarter, something like that. He missed his mark. Don't get me wrong, missing your marks I get, but have you seen the size of that wheel gun? It's a pretty big wheel gun.
It does. Doesn't really matter if you miss your mark if the nut is stripped.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter, no.
So, well, he backpedaled on that. He definitely went back and he said, "Hey, I shouldn't have blamed him." But it was really, I thought that was a pretty low thing to do. And I don't know if he was just, fired up from the situation, but to take it out on Bottas because he may have missed his mark by an inch. I get it's a game of precision and things like that, but you can't tell me that every pit stop these guys are coming in and they're hitting their marks perfectly. They don't miss by not more than a half an inch. You can't tell me that. I don't believe you.
That was Ricciardo's problems at the beginning of the season too with the McLaren. They said the reason why they're having a lot of their bad pit stops.
He was missing it by a foot.
He was missing it hugely.
Yeah, I'm like, get out of here.
But it's crazy to see. So Max gets a great jump right off the line with that first spot being open, and he's able to come over to the right to cut off Bottas.
Yeah.
So it's just to think, if say that wasn't it, Bottas got that great jump and gone, Max probably would have won because the nut got stuck.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
So,
I think what I liked the most was I liked how they left that first spot open. I know it's part of the rule book, but I like how they left it open. They didn't try to shuffle the grid up and make it a whatever. That spot was earned by Leclerc, and I like how they left it open. So that was pretty good.
I think the big shocker of Monaco, honestly, is that Mazepin didn't end up in the pool.
Bro. Surprisingly, Mazepin hasn't been too horrible in the last couple of races.
Unless your name's Mick Schumacher, because then he's going like
Azerbaijan.
There is some crazy blood between the two of them right now.
I think they're being nicey nice for the cameras, but I do agree with you. I think Mick Schumacher's pretty much fed up with Mazepin. Let's get into Azerbaijan because that's pretty much where that happened. I think it was like on the last lap. But we'll get into Leclerc doing Leclerc things.
I'm telling you, though, this race, if there is one that you guys have to go, if you want to go back and watch again, probably, in my opinion, best race of the season so far. I know it's only been like 7-8 races, but it's still probably one of the best races, one of my favorite tracks to watch. Even though it was funny, it wasn't on last year, so I had to watch a lot of highlights on what there was. But that was just...
I like the track because there's a technical side, there's a speed side. You could set people up going into corners. I don't mind Azerbaijan. I kind of like the track.
I called it the magical red flag this week.
Bro, there's been a lot of red flags. I want to say that this year we've probably set, there's got to be a record for the most red flags ever. Like, there's got to be a lot. There's been a lot.
This has to also be, even though I am a Max fan, my favorite podium of the season so far.
Really?
It is an amazing podium, especially since everybody got sacked by their team last year and they're all right there on the top. Sergio Perez, Racing Point, sacked first.
Sergio Perez was first. Vettel was second.
Sacked by Ferrari, second.
Gasly third.
Sacked by Red Bull a while back, third.
And then you got Leclerc in fourth. Shouldn't be there. Pretty surprised that he was there, but, wrestling that car to where it shouldn't be. Lando Norris in fifth. Alonso sixth. Tsunoda in seventh. Good finish for him. Interesting race for him. I thought he could have done a little bit better. He had some moments. He put it in the wall in qualifying. So seventh was pretty good for him. Eighth for Carlos Sainz. Ninth, Danny Ricciardo. He needs to step it up. I don't know what's going on with him. And I know he's got another year to figure things out, but he needs to get up there. And
my favorite part about this entire standing is that Hamilton finishes behind Mazepin.
You're a horrible person.
It is beautiful, isn't it?
So did Verstappen, by the way.
He didn't finish, okay? Don't even get me started on Pirelli. I'm sorry.
We're going to get there.
Having Pirelli investigate Pirelli tires? Who does that? Who does that?
I thought it was a perfect investigation.
It's like having a dirty cop investigate themselves. Duh.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the Army do that. I've seen a guilty sergeant investigate himself, have to write a report on himself.
Are you kidding me? I want to be in the room next to that.
Number 10, Kimi Räikkönen.
Kimi? We're under attack, apparently.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
That was loud.
I don't know if it was fireworks or what.
Kimi Räikkönen in 10th. So let's get into it. Leclerc doing Leclerc things was my first note. Pulls that car into fourth. Ridiculous. This was a really good race to watch. I had that written down. I really had enjoyed it. It was not boring at all. There was always something going on. Starting with pretty much qualifying and turn 15?
15. So you had a total of 6.
15.
You had a total of 6 red flags, 2 during the race and 4 during qualifying. And all 4 were at turn 15.
Jesus.
And it makes sense. When they're coming up to turn 15, when you really look at it, you have the runoff to the right. But when you're coming at it with such speed, you're having to make that decision. Am I going to go left and try to push it and see if you can hold it? Or do I take it safe, use the runoff area because I don't think I'm going to get across?
It's not even that. Because if you've played the game, the video game, That turn is weird because the setup before it is the big banana turn to the left, the big bend to the left. And what you're doing is you're cutting it to the left, coming close to the left wall to try to cut off the track. And then you want to get back out to the right-hand side to try to make the apex for the left-hander going into 15. The problem is the way the track is set up, you're almost angled where you're looking straight into the opposite corner. So you almost, if you want to go to the runoff, you really gotta turn to the right a little bit to hit that runoff. If you go straight, dead straight, you're going straight into the corner of the wall.
Yep.
So I think that's what makes it confusing. I think that's how the track was, personally, I think it was designed that way to make it confusing for the drivers, and that was the talented part. And yeah, they didn't have it on lock at all.
Well, what's nice to see is the remodel at turn 8, the castle turn, to make it a little bit wider. So now you saw no one went stupid and hit the area there. I was so stupid. No one hit that this time, but everyone hit 15.
Yeah. Hey, at least he didn't hit 15.
He didn't. No, that was basically everybody else. Sainz 15, Verstappen hit 15.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about Stroll setting off the chaos in the race. I think it was lap 18 or something like that.
I think it might have been.
Was it later than that? Deeper than that? 40? I don't remember. I think
40.
It was 40 because I remember them talking later on how Max wasn't going to be able to get to the end of the race on the tires he was on. Stroll was on the hard tires, I believe, came around, hit the straight, and as soon as he got to the straight, the tire pretty much let go, cut him into the wall, smashed him into the wall. You could hear the panic in his voice. Get me out of here. Red flag, red flag.
He did a good job getting his car to the left, considering you're coming down to that main straight where these cars are going 200 miles an hour. And where he hit, that could have been really dangerous if that car made it to the right.
I don't think he had much of a choice of where that car was going, bro.
I mean,
there was no tires on the motherfucker.
He was able to angle it enough to get himself to stay to the left and not get in the middle of everything.
It was rough to watch. And then what happens at the end of the race, Max had the same issue. But Max's was a little more dangerous, in my opinion, because it happened at the end of the straight. So he's already picked up all his momentum. He had a 200-mile-an-hour crash.
So Stroll was on lap 31.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you got Max Verstappen, and what was interesting about that too, where he crashed, he like there was a wall right next to him, and then he missed that wall and hit the further one because there was like a little space there for the tow truck, and I think that could have been a lot worse than it was. I'm happy that it was so much of a straight line that there was nothing really there.
They showed a lot of simulations that if he had stayed left, he would have hit, and the tire went, he would have hit to those walls coming forward in where you're going in for the pit stop,
the pit lane.
And he would have been totaled. Like, who knows? I don't know if the halo would have even helped. But the fact that he stayed to the right, was able, the left tire went, and he turned right, and that hit the nose first,
right,
saved the heck out of him. Now,
it's crazy to think that you can, just because, I mean, don't get me wrong, you're coming to the right there because you're setting up the next turn going into the left-hander to turn one, but if you really think about it, that one thing probably saved his life.
And it was interesting. So now you got everybody having to come through the pit lanes because they got to clear up the track. And Williams, of course, screws over Latifi. I mean, they literally said to him, when you listen to the radio, stay out.
Yeah.
I'm not a driver, but to me, stay out means stay on the track.
It means stay out.
Like,
it fucking means stay out. I think the engineer just got confused, and the first thing that popped out of his mouth was stay out, even though he was probably meaning like come into the pits, but don't come into the pit.
Yeah.
And I get that, but like what came out of his mouth was definitely, and they weren't upset with him at all. Like the team was like, yeah, I fucked up. I got that one. I
was watching this race, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, Max is going to get a win. Max is going to get a win.
I had a feeling that was something bad was going to happen. He was so in control the whole race. I kind of almost had a feeling it was going to happen, especially after Stroll had that issue. He went onto those hards really, really early. So I kind of had a feeling, but I do agree. Pirelli investigating Pirelli.
That should never happen.
There was no reason for that. Obviously, they're going to say it wasn't our tires. They did say that that both teams ran them within the available and recommended frame, but they ran them lower than they expected. Therefore, it caused that issue. Personally, I don't think that should be an issue at all. You can't make the frame say, just for argument's sake, 16 to 26 and somebody rides it at 16 and the tire explodes.
Well, I think they also said that they put an extra 2 psi in those back tires on the hards, making it even harder on those tires. So I think there was just way too much going into it, and they didn't really know exactly what was going to happen. It's just it hurt watching that for both teams, but some of the racing going into it, though, getting to that point was amazing.
Oh yeah,
the pit stops with Red Bull, getting that Perez out in front,
right?
And Perez had an amazing drive, keeping Hamilton behind him the entire time. It's great that there's 2 races in a row that Hamilton has to stare at that Honda logo for the entire race. Like Gasly on 1, now he's staring at Perez the entire time. He also got held up though, because I think this was the race where he went to go release, but Gasly was just coming right by him.
Yeah.
So he got held up there even more,
yeah,
which made me laugh even more.
You're
harder.
You're savage.
I really am. I'm sorry. I just don't like him.
When I have my buddy Alex on the show, he's a Mercedes fan. Oh, no. Alex is an Aston Martin fan because he's a Vettel fan.
Yeah. But then, so they line up everybody. New standings start to end that race. And do you know what a magic button is? I didn't really get a chance to read all that.
I didn't read it. I overheard other people who overheard. And from my understanding, the magic button is, and it's a special button that they have that is, I think it's like by the clutch on the back of the steering wheel. And what it does is it helps warm the brakes and tires up in the warm-up lap, so the formation lap. And what happened was Lewis turned it off. You're supposed to turn it off before you start. But when he, I guess, released the clutch or at the start of the race, he accidentally flicked it back on. And when he flicked it back on, that's when he got into the first turn. He went to step on the brakes just locked up, because I think what it does is it causes more friction on the brake, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what I think he was expecting it to be a gradual, increase on the brakes, and the brakes were just like meh, and locked up, and he just slid right through.
Because I remember watching the restart. My mom comes into the room to sit with me because she's just heard me yelling at the TV for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Why does his car look like it's smoking and almost on fire?" I go, "Man, his brakes are really hot. I wonder what's happening." And then there he is in the runoff area. And then the carnage that ensued of Gasly passing, Vettel passing.
And people everywhere.
Leclerc over here. Now I'm getting past him.
Such good racing.
It was so fun to watch. I got to work. There's a woman at my job who's from England. She's a Mercedes fan. And I looked at her. I said, "Have you watched the race yet?" She goes, "No." I'm going to just go, "Ha," and I'm going to leave it at that. You got to watch it because I can't ruin it for you because I'm sorry.
It was a good race. And watching Mercedes, watching Hamilton make that weird mistake and overcook it. The podium was great. Sergio Perez, Sebastian Vettel, Pierre Gasly. Gasly on the podium again. Stoked for him. Even though I'm not a Vettel fan, and I think it's time for Vettel to retire, I was very happy that he got a second place. And, this was a great podium. All these guys having a pretty interesting year. Vettel's having a hell of a year. He's driving well. I just don't think he's driving the car. The car is just not there.
I definitely have to say this year, the Aston Martin strategy team has definitely gotten better.
Yeah.
And you're noticing they're one of the only teams that consistently go, "We're going to go hard tire, have one of you guys go as long as humanly possible, and we'll see what happens."
Sometimes it works and sometimes it don't, because that's all based on that yellow flag and trying to get everybody to slow down, and hopefully you get in when you need to get in.
Yeah.
It's a gamble.
Red Bull does that with Sergio Perez, the master of conserving the tire. That guy will go forever. I think, what did they say in the last race? We're going to go plan A plus 9. Like he was still out there, and everyone's going looking at this tire degradation track like crazy, and still Perez is just driving around.
Yeah, man. I'll say that I think my biggest shock this year, and I always knew that he was, good. I never thought that he was not worth the positions that he's getting. But Lando Norris, man, he's doing really good. Yeah. He's really shocking me. The level of professionalism, the confidence that he's driving with. He's running people down at the end of the race. He's consistent. He's fast. He's saving his tires. He's beating his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. And not only is he beating Daniel Ricciardo, he's coming in front of, Carlos Sainz. And I thought that even though McLaren is the third, I think third or fourth, right? But with Ferrari, personally, I think their car's third. and Ferrari should be fourth. But for some reason, with the driver lineup, Ferrari is third and McLaren is fourth.
Well, currently in the standings, McLaren is third, Ferrari is fourth. McLaren 110 points, Ferrari 94 points.
Yeah, but it's all. I think that's based on driver and car. Like if you switch the drivers with the cars, I think McLaren would run away with this because I do think the McLaren is better than the Ferrari at this point.
Yeah, Lando's looking good. 2 podiums and 7 races. There you can definitely see that there's been sometimes some friction on between Ricciardo and Lando. It's not like something where you think one's going to run the other one off.
No,
but there's times where you see Daniel doesn't want to give up the position because he wants to run. You know, he wants to keep going.
Yeah,
and they're like, no, let Lando through. And
I think he's being a good teammate though. Because he has let Lando through a couple of times.
In this last one, especially, he had the fresher tires, so that made a lot of sense.
And I'll also say that I think if it was the other way around, Lando would give it up for him. And I think it's more of a mutual respect thing. I think they don't like doing it.
Oh,
right. You're not
would
gonna
anybody?
Right. You're not going to like giving up a position. But I think there's a mutual respect there. And that's why they're okay with flipping positions for the betterment of the team when they know. Because at this point in their career, at this point in their skill level and professionalism, they know when, at what pace they have. It displays it on the steering wheel. You know where you're at. So I don't think it's that big of a reach to say that the mutual professionalism leads to those driver swaps, and it's not that big of a deal.
It surprises me a little bit this year. Definitely one of the drivers that I thought would be doing better. Now, I know he had a retirement in one of the races. Ocon all the way down to 12th. I think Ocon finally had a good run of what Alpine was, and that they'd be setting him up so well to be running a lot better. Yeah, he had, I think it was, I don't know if it was a gearbox issue. He had some kind of issue with one race and had to retire.
Yeah.
But it looks like sometimes they want to favor Alonso just because Alonso is the ex-world champion. He's Fernando Alonso. And he's not doing much better. He's only in 11th.
Well, I would say that Alpine must love, and I know Ocon is a French driver, but at this point, I think they love him so much. They gave him a 3-year deal, like right before the France race. So
yeah, they're going to build around him.
I guess they're going to build around him, and I guess that's where they want their future to go. I do see if Fernando jumps ship, I don't think he'll jump ship after one season. I think Fernando Alonso is the guy that gives at least 2. But if he did jump ship, I wouldn't put it past Alpine to go after Gasly. I think they'll approach him.
I think that's what everyone wants to see, or everyone thinks is going to happen, because a full French team and a full French lineup. You imagine the Paul Ricard with a French full team and a French manufacturer, and everyone's sitting there eating a croissant, just going, "Yay!"
You're ridiculous. All right, everybody. That's everything for me. Did you have any other thing that you really wanted to hit on before we get out of here?
Not really too much in Formula One. I mean, this has been probably one of those seasons that has just been a banger so far, top to bottom. It's my second season really watching Formula One. Like last year was the COVID season. It was my first time sitting and having it. Right. And now that I get to actually watch the races on the weekends, not like 12 hours later after my Twitter and my phone's already told me who won.
Right.
It has been so enjoyable.
Good. I mean, and that's the way it should be. And you speak well on it. I'm interested to see what your take on IndyCar is when we have our IndyCar episode coming up.
What's really funny is sitting there watching it, and my mom is starting to understand Formula One.
It's not a hard sport to understand. That's why I think a lot of people like it. It's not very hard. It's not difficult to understand, but there is a lot to know. So you got to kind of really pay attention and dive into the little nuances here and there of racing and motorsports in general. I really want to thank you, everybody, for listening in, tuning in. Like, subscribe, 5 stars on the podcast. Share it with your friends. We are back. We don't foresee any more downtime. Again, we're going to get together and do a France recap. And then we're going to go ahead and start talking a little IndyCar as well, because the IndyCar season has been nuts.
Oh, it's been so much fun.
It's been really good. And we might even get into a little NASCAR, because at this point, Kyle Larson looks like he's running away with this motherfucker. And I mean, he even grabbed the All-Star $1 million purse.
Wouldn't that be driving away with this motherfucker?
I mean, at this point, he doesn't look like he can lose. So, I mean, you put him in a pair of Lamborghinis and he probably taken across the finish line. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate everybody listening. Hope Brett gets back out here quick. As much as I like you on the show, Newman, I miss my brother.
I know this was the thing you guys love to do, and I know Formula One, IndyCar. This is the first season I'm watching it, and I understand it to a point. There's a lot.
You're doing well.
See, if you're a fan of Formula One, you'll like IndyCar because it's kind of like Formula One a little bit on steroids because there's stuff just happening all the time. Like it's going everywhere.
No blue flags.
There's
racing
nothing. I haven't seen somebody like, yeah, there's some lapped cars from time to time, but one maybe
they fight.
Unless your name's Jimmy Johnson, then it's every time.
Stop. Leave the man alone. We'll talk to you guys later. Peace.